A week before our wedding, my fiancée disappeared while camping with friends. I searched for her for a solid month, nearly losing my mind. But on Christmas Day, under the grand Christmas tree in the city's central square, I saw her embracing and kissing her childhood sweetheart. Vivian Blackwood was nestled in the man's arms, cooing. If this goes on any longer, I might not want to go back and marry Sincere Clark after all. Ethan Miller asked if she regretted disappearing, if she really wasn't planning on going back. She hesitated for a moment. No regrets. Let's just have another week of fun. My parents will cover for us anyway. I'll show up again once he's truly frantic. Hidden in the crowd, I watched their intimate display and let out a bitter smile. The next second, I called home. Stop looking for Vivian. There's no way she'll be my wife now. Sincere, dear, why have you suddenly stopped looking for Vivian? My mother was stunned by my words. After all, when Vivian Blackwood had disappeared while camping with friends, I had spent a whole month searching for her without rest, losing several pounds and becoming utterly haggard. I looked at the two people still kissing under the giant Christmas tree in the city square and smiled bitterly. That's right, Mom. Just consider Vivian Blackwood dead. My mom knew I was speaking out of anger, but she didn't press for details and instinctively comforted me. It's about time. What's so good about that woman anyway? Sincere, since you've left it up to us, I'll definitely find you a suitable match. It'll save you from being fixated on this one, whom I never approved of from the start. My father, who had a hot temper, was overjoyed to hear I was no longer hung up on Vivian. Before I could say anything, the surrounding crowd gasped as dazzling fireworks exploded in the sky. It should have been an incredibly romantic scene, but my heart was filled with nothing but a chilling cold. I looked at this woman, who had just complained to her first love about how controlling I was, and thought my father was right, even though I had never been controlling with Vivian. Vivian and I met online in college and were together for a long time. A few years after graduation, I proposed to her. Ethan Miller had returned 2 years ago. I always knew Vivian had a childhood sweetheart from high school. She never shied away from mentioning him over the years. I had always believed that our relationship had reached a point where nothing could go wrong. But a single phone call from Ethan, a simple "I'm back," was enough to make Vivian's heart fly away. Over the years, I had given her absolute freedom and personal space, yet she deceived me time and time again. I begged her to keep her distance from Ethan, to stop lying about being with her girlfriends, and to hang out less with her old party friends at nightclubs. Vivian, haven't I given you enough freedom? Yet you were the one who betrayed our relationship first. Initially, Vivian did listen to me, but as time went on, she reverted to her old ways, staying out all night, living a life of debauchery. What I never expected was that, over time, she would brand me as a controlling person. She even staged a disappearance right before our wedding. If this goes on any longer, I might not want to go back and marry Sincere Clark after all. But when you accepted my proposal, you had tears in your eyes. Were you really that happy during the month I spent searching for you, Vivian? No regrets. If I go back, let's have another week of fun. My parents will cover for us anyway. No wonder your parents wouldn't let me call the police. They seemed so calm just saying she would be found. It turns out I was the only one who was worried the whole time. I don't want to go back to being manipulated by his controlling nature. I'll show up again once he's truly frantic. Vivian, I was indeed frantic. Do you have any idea how long it's been since I had a good night's sleep? I had even resorted to the superstition of making a wish under the Christmas tree for you to appear. And you did appear, but with another man. This must be what it feels like to be utterly disheartened. I couldn't bear to watch them gaze lovingly at each other any longer. I turned and went straight home. The moment I got home, I grabbed some sacks and suitcases and packed up every single thing of Vivian's from the past 6 years and threw it all out the door. The next day, I was awakened by a frantic knocking on the door. It was the first good night's sleep I'd had in a long time, so I was a bit dazed when I woke up. I opened the door without even looking through the peephole. It was Vivian's parents. Both wore sour expressions. Seeing my sleepy state, Martha Blackwood sneered. Sincere Clark, I heard from your parents that you're not going to look for our Vivian anymore. What is the meaning of this? Did you ever even love our Vivian? That's right, Sincere. Why would you just stop looking all of a sudden? We're worried sick as her parents as Martha fired off her shrewish questions. Harold Blackwood chimed in, pushing his way into the apartment. I looked at the two of them, dressed in opulent, gaudy clothes that screamed nouveau riche, and scoffed inwardly. Outwardly, however, I managed to put on a pained expression, my eyes turning red. Vivian had broken my heart so thoroughly that feigning this look was effortless. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, I've been searching for so long. Perhaps something terrible has happened. Maybe we should just call the police." "Who are you saying something terrible happened to? How dare you curse your own fiancée like that?" Our Vivian probably just went off to clear her head. Harold was instantly displeased. He plopped down on the sofa and prepared to smoke. Martha, looking equally grim, urged me on. "Sincere, you're my son-in-law. You're just one step away from the wedding. How can you just give up the search? You find my daughter right now, and then you get married, Mrs. Blackwood. I really can't find her. Why don't we try calling the police?" Seeing their indignant faces, I felt a wave of irritation but kept my tone helpless as I made the suggestion. It was the same as before. Every time I mentioned the police, Martha's reaction was especially fierce. A flicker of guilt crossed her face before she slammed her hand on the coffee table, her voice sharp. What good would calling the police do? The wedding is right around the corner. All our friends and relatives have been notified. How unlucky would it be to call the police now? It's disgraceful, exactly. If the police get involved, they'll be questioning everyone. Who's ever heard of the bride going missing and calling the police right before the wedding? Harold lit his cigarette and sighed with genuine feeling. I sneered internally. They claimed calling the police was disgraceful, but in reality they were all cut from the same corrupt cloth. My poor daughter, Sincere Clark. If you hadn't been so hard on her, she wouldn't have run away from home. You rich kids are all the same. I knew I shouldn't have set you two up. I should have just let my daughter be with Ethan Miller." As Martha spoke, she even started wiping away tears, her words painting me as a controlling monster whose education wasn't even good enough for her daughter. I had no idea what kind of nonsense Vivian had been feeding these two. They complained about me now, but they seemed to have forgotten their own expressions when I first took an interest in Vivian. Back then, every time I visited their home, they practically begged me to stay the night, calling me son-in-law with sickening sweetness. For the past few years, the Blackwood family business had only managed to get on its feet with my family's help. Now that they had a little money, they looked down on my degree and my rich kid lifestyle. I hadn't been a great student in high school, so my parents sent me abroad to study. I came back with a degree from overseas. How did that make me someone to look down on? Was Ethan's degree from a domestic university really so much more valuable? Though I was indignant, I maintained a look of profound sadness. "You're right, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. Since you have so many complaints, and Vivian and I aren't married yet, perhaps it's best we call it off. Our families can go their separate ways. It would save us from a difficult marriage down the road. Wouldn't that be—" A flash of delight crossed Martha's face, but before she could speak, Harold tapped her arm to stop her. He turned to me and said, "Sincere, we still think we should keep looking. Marriage is a serious matter, not something you can just cancel. Don't be rash. We were just worried earlier." I nodded in agreement. After seeing them out, I heard Harold admonishing his wife in the hallway. What was that all about in there? Sure, the Blackwood family is doing better now, but we're not at the top yet. We still need the Clarks for our business. What good would it do to break things off now? Martha, realizing her mistake, quickly agreed. I sneered to myself. Just then my father called. "Sincere, I've found a potential marriage alliance for you. You two should get to know each other. Come home tonight, meet her, and have dinner." I readily agreed and quickly got myself ready. When I got home, my jaw dropped. "Victoria Ashworth? It's you?" Victoria, dressed in an elegant white dress, sat gracefully on the living room sofa. Seeing my astonished expression, she stood up, lifted her chin, and said with a hint of pride, "What's wrong? Am I not good enough for you?" I stared at Miss Ashworth, stunned. While it was true that the Ashworth family had significant business dealings with mine, Victoria and Vivian had never gotten along. Victoria and I had studied abroad together and were, for a time, friends. But after I returned and started my relationship with Vivian, Victoria became cold toward her. She repeatedly picked fights with Vivian and her family, claiming we were from different worlds. At first, I tried to politely intervene, but that only made her angrier. For a while, I found her completely unreasonable and ended up giving her the cold shoulder as well. Yet here she was, willing to marry me, willing to step in as the bride, even after my wedding date with Vivian had already been announced. and form a real alliance with my family. It was unbelievable in my memory. The great Miss Ashworth had always found me too mild-mannered and dull. At that thought, I couldn't help but let out a helpless laugh and nodded repeatedly. "You're good enough, more than good enough. But didn't you used to hate me?" Victoria understood my unspoken question, and a blush crept onto her cheeks. It's not like I really hated you. It was your fault for always orbiting around that Blackwood woman anyway. I'm willing to marry you now besides. Who else would be willing to take on this mess of yours?" You're willing to marry me," I murmured, still feeling dazed. My mother, standing nearby, looked at me as if I were a lost cause. "Sincere, don't you see it? Vicky has always liked you," she told me just now. The reason she always clashed with Vivian was that she saw how fake she was with you, how she was always just using you. Vicky was trying to stand up for you. Victoria looked a bit aggrieved herself and muttered, "And you always yelled at me. She was only after your money, and you couldn't see it. You even stopped talking to me. How could you be like that? You're right, I was wrong. I was blinded by Vivian. I'm sorry, Victoria." Hearing this, I felt ashamed and quickly apologized. She, however, was perfectly composed. "It's fine, I forgive you. I'm going to marry you anyway." With the enthusiastic support of Victoria and the Ashworth family, our wedding preparations moved at lightning speed. The news spread quickly, and soon every prominent figure in the city knew. The consensus was that it was a powerful alliance, a perfect match of talent and looks. When Harold and Martha Blackwood heard the news, they rushed over to find me. They stood at my door, looking completely distraught. When I opened it, they immediately started questioning me, all their previous arrogance gone. Martha asked cautiously, "Sincere, dear, why is everyone saying you're going to marry the heiress of the Ashworth group? What's going on? Weren't you supposed to marry our Vivian?" Facing their confused gazes, I dropped the pretense and nodded directly. "That's right. As I told you last time, I'm done with Vivian. We can't find her anyway, and I'm not waiting anymore. Sincere, don't be rash, you wait. I'll go find Vivian and bring her back right now. Don't do anything rash." How can you just throw away a 6-year relationship so easily? I remained silent, watching them leave with a slow, mocking smile forming on my lips. A moment later, a video was sent to my phone. "Mr. Clark Jr., here is the latest video." It was from the private investigator I had hired to keep an eye on Vivian. From the looks of it, she was out shopping with Ethan Miller, arm in arm, looking blissfully happy. Then she answered a call. After listening for just a few seconds, her face filled with shock. "What? Mom, you want me to come back immediately? Sincere is engaged to who?" "Mom, don't worry. We'll talk when I get back." Vivian's face went pale and she was about to leave, in a panic, when Ethan grabbed her arm. He leaned in and whispered in her ear for a long time. I could guess what he was saying. Sure enough, Vivian's panicked expression soon faded, replaced by a rosy-cheeked flush of anger, as if she'd been played. She called her mother back. "Mom, I'm not coming back, don't worry, just listen to me. I know Sincere. He loves me too much to do this to me. This is all just a tactic to force me to come back. He's so controlling, this is just his way. Instead of actually looking for me, he's using these low-handed tricks to make me return. The more he does this, the less I respect him." Her parents apparently disagreed. I could faintly hear them urging her on the other end, probably pressuring her for the sake of the family business. Vivian grew impatient. "I know I'll come back and get married, stop talking about it. If I didn't care about the family, would we be as successful as we are today?" "Okay, Mom, Dad, I'm hanging up. When I get back, I'll make Sincere get on his knees and grovel for me at the wedding." The video ended there. I really had no idea where Vivian got her confidence from. Victoria appeared behind me, looking down at the finished video on my screen, a playful, teasing look on her beautiful face. "Fiancée, I heard she's going to make you kneel and grovel. You're not going to abandon me again, are you?" Hearing this, I met her eyes, shook my head, and smiled. "Never. I'm going to marry you. Vivian can do whatever she wants." I was just stating a fact, but it made Victoria blush deeply. She hurried off to another room in embarrassment, tossing one last sentence over her shoulder. That's for the best soon. The wedding day arrived, and Vivian was nowhere to be seen. Her parents kept reassuring me on one hand while urging Vivian to come back on the other. From the looks of it, she wasn't listening. On the day of the wedding, my parents booked a rooftop garden of the most luxurious hotel in the city, inviting celebrities and reporters from home and abroad. The venue was a blend of Eastern and Western styles, designed by a dedicated team to be both high-end and tasteful. I had just instructed a few people to prepare the fireworks when my phone rang. I pulled it out and saw a name I hadn't been able to reach for over a month, a name that hadn't tried to call me either. Vivian Blackwood. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and answered. The person on the other end seemed to expect me to pick up instantly and adopted a haughty tone. Sincere, today's the wedding, right? You must be dying. You're stuck without a bride, aren't you? If you beg me right now, I'll come back and marry you. At this point, I had no idea what fantasy Vivian was living in. I spoke softly. Vivian, look up. Vivian sounded confused on the other end. She frowned, looked up, and gasped. I knew she had seen the live broadcast of the wedding on the giant screen of the office building across the street. The wedding, jointly funded by the Clark and Ashworth families, was being broadcast on every electronic screen in the city. At that moment, all of them were showing my wedding. As the camera slowly panned, revealing Victoria in her custom-made wedding gown, Vivian's face turned deathly white. Sincere, you're really getting married? And to Victoria Ashworth? Vivian's voice cracked as she shrieked, unable to believe I was not only getting married but also broadcasting it live. She was even more incredulous that my bride was Victoria, her rival for years. Sincere, don't joke like this. I'll marry you. You even got Victoria to play along in this act with you. There's no need to provoke me like this. Didn't you hate her too? Hearing her words now, I almost wanted to laugh. I said, I'd advise you not to speak about my wife that way. Hating her in the past doesn't mean I hate her now. Vivian, did you really think that if you came back and said you were willing to marry me, I'd come running back to you like a puppy, just like before? Vivian didn't understand my attitude. I continued, but why should I? Why would I marry a woman who deliberately disappeared on me? Vivian had never heard me speak to her in this tone before, and she panicked. I was just trying to prove whether you loved me or not. Sincere, you only looked for a few days before giving up. I'm so disappointed in you to that. I only offered silence. Vivian was silent for a moment too, then suddenly realized that a phone call couldn't pinpoint her exact location. You told me to look up. You know where I am? I nodded with a cold smile. Vivian, I know far more than you think. How is that possible? How could you possibly know everything? The places I go are places you'd never go, and have no interest in. Vivian frantically looked around for paparazzi or photographers, but found no one. Next time you're with Ethan Miller, don't pick a place so close. We don't need to be in contact anymore. I hung up the call. The wedding went off without a hitch. In fact, many people who weren't even on the guest list showed up to offer their congratulations. By the time Vivian found me, the reception was over. Victoria and I had just finished our final dance, and she had gone to rest. Vivian walked slowly through the lavishly decorated venue, momentarily stunned. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, her envy and jealousy palpable. Sincere, the wedding you promised to plan for me wasn't even this grand. You gave this to Victoria? I looked at the somewhat broken Vivian, my expression unchanging. Speaking of which, I should be thanking you, Vivian. Thank you for letting me go. You're thanking me? That sentence made Vivian completely break down. She glared at me fiercely for a long moment. When she saw no crack in my composure, her envy and jealousy turned to pure resentment. Sincere, Clark, you'll regret not marrying me from now on. I'm with Ethan. He'll surpass you one day. After throwing down her threat, Vivian left with her head held high. He'll surpass me one day? I couldn't help but chuckle. How could his years of hard study compare to my family's 3 generations in business? What was this woman thinking? Didn't she know that with a degree like Ethan's, the best he could hope for at my family's company was to meet me? He wasn't even qualified to meet my father. I turned and instructed my assistant to cut off all cooperation with the Blackwood family. Harold, who found out later, came with an equally defiant Martha to plead for Vivian. They were eventually led away by a newly arrived Vivian, who was now bursting with pride. Let me tell you, Sincere, Clark, you think I care about your family's money? Ethan has found a new way to make money. We don't need to beg you. We won't be any worse off than you in the future. They stood before me like clowns, and I laughed mockingly. Fine, I'll wait for him to be better than me. He doesn't need to do much, just be able to afford a wedding here. I tapped my foot on the floor of the hotel, located in one of the most expensive districts in the city. Their expressions changed, and they turned and left, muttering curses. After that, with my family cutting off cooperation and withdrawing investments, the Blackwood family was down for only a short while. before they and Ethan started aggressively fundraising everywhere. The Clark Group had always helped manage the Blackwood's small company, and the business they handled was mostly small contracts from us. Though small, it was enough to make them very wealthy. Now that the families had split, we also withdrew our management team. The entire Blackwood company was now a hollow shell. Aside from a few entry-level employees they had hired themselves, there was no one capable of leading. Management descended into chaos, and several key people resigned. Yet they naively believed they could manage it all on their own. They even thought the Clark Group's people were too timid, only chasing paltry profits, and were thrilled to finally be making their own decisions. Their recent fundraising attempts, however, were so amateurish and presumptuous that they offended many of their past partners. Several of those business owners called me. I simply told them that whatever the Blackwoods were doing had nothing to do with me or my family. From now on, the Blackwood company was not affiliated with the Clark Group, and they didn't need to call me about it again. At the same time, I managed to find out what they were trying to invest in. Years of business experience told me at a glance that it was a scam. A get-rich-quick scheme with guaranteed high returns? It was laughable. What era was this? People still believed in foolproof investments. But I didn't meddle, merely advising the other business owners to be cautious and to warn their circles not to invest. Unable to secure loans, Vivian naturally blamed it all on me, bombarding me with voicemails and calls. "Sincere Clark, you just can't stand to see my family succeed. Why are you telling those business owners not to invest in us? Trying to use the Clark Group to bully people, are you? I never knew you were such a small-minded schemer who plays dirty tricks. Let me tell you, even if you stop them from investing, I've found plenty of other owners who were willing. Her face was now so hateful that I had no desire to communicate with her further. I simply hung up and blocked her number. It was obvious she had been using the Clark Group's name to ask for money. It didn't matter. Once the amount became significant, our legal team would step in. Sure enough, it wasn't long before the Clark Group's lawyers contacted the Blackwood family. The investors who had been duped also terminated their agreements before any money was transferred. Vivian's triumphant mood was short-lived. Her calls to me went unanswered. I heard that when she couldn't borrow money, she took out a loan from the bank, using the family company as collateral. Given the timing, it was clear that the first small, sweet return from the scheme had made her reckless. The second, larger return from the project emboldened her to mortgage their house as well. The entire Blackwood family started walking around with their heads held high. The returns made them believe they were about to enter high society, and they began a frantic spree of revenge spending, buying luxury goods they could never have afforded before. Many friends told me they had seen Vivian acting arrogantly in luxury stores. I constantly received photos from her and her family, showing off their new purchases, luxury goods, new cars. They were living quite lavishly. I neither blocked them nor replied, simply watching the spectacle like a joke. Without the Clark Group's guidance, they were utterly foolish. Before long, the third and largest return never came. Ethan Miller vanished along with the money. Overnight, the Blackwood family fell from heaven to hell. The company couldn't operate and was on the verge of bankruptcy. Not only had they lost all the money they had made through the Clark Group over the years, but they were also buried under a mountain of debt. The next day, a haggard-looking Vivian was at my gate. When she finally saw me returning home from a business meeting, she forced what she must have thought was a sweet smile. "Sincere, dear. I had just gotten out of my car when I heard her use the name from when we were dating." A shiver of disgust ran down my spine. I pretended not to see her and walked into the villa's courtyard. But Vivian slipped in before the gate closed, grabbing my arm and pleading, "Sincere, please, just listen to me for a minute. We were together for 6 years. Can't you even spare a few minutes to talk?" I looked at her face, which she had carefully made up, and pulled my arm away, feeling nothing. "If you have something to say it here." Vivian's face lit up, and she hesitated for a moment. "It's just, could you lend me some money? Not too much, just a few $1,000,000. I'm really in a tight spot right now. For the sake of our past, please. Just help me this once." I remained unmoved and spread my hands helplessly. "I don't have any cash. My wife handles all our finances." Vivian froze. Just then, the villa's main door opened. Victoria, likely wondering why my car had been parked for so long, came out with the butler to check. Seeing Vivian, her face twisted into a mocking sneer. Well, look who it is. If it isn't Miss Blackwood. What brings you here to see our Sincere so late at night?" A look of shame crossed Vivian's face. Before she could speak, Victoria interrupted, her eyes scanning Vivian up and down. Just a few months ago, weren't you buying the latest designer bags on a whim? Why are you dressed so shabbily now? Not a single brand name on you. Don't tell me your business failed and you're here to borrow money from our Sincere. Vivian was mortified and at a loss for words. Victoria stepped forward, took my arm, and tilted her chin at Vivian. I'm sorry, Miss Blackwood, but I'm waiting for Sincere to have dinner. I'll have to ask you to leave. Vivian looked even more humiliated. As she was being escorted out, she looked at me pitifully. Sincere, dear, aren't you going to invite me in for a while? I was fed up. I walked over, grabbed her, and pushed her toward the gate. Vivian, I have been very patient with you. Do not come and disturb our lives again. As she was pushed out, Vivian's eyes turned red. Sincere Clark, I'll be waiting for you later tonight on the bench by the river, the one where we watch the fireworks together if you don't come. I will keep harassing you and your family. I was unmoved. I turned and went back into the villa. I told Victoria what had happened and asked for her opinion. To my surprise, Victoria took a sip of her soup and nodded readily. Go Sincere. You know you can't push someone too hard when they have nothing left. What if she becomes unstable and does something dangerous during one of her future harassment attempts? Besides, you should go get some closure. Just be careful. I was touched by Victoria's understanding. Later that evening, I met Vivian by the river. She was wearing a purple dress, specifically because I had once told her I liked seeing her in purple. But looking at it now, I felt nothing. The old feelings were gone forever. I had hoped for a dignified end, but her very first words made my face turn cold. Vivian tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked at me eagerly. Sincere, I don't believe you truly love Victoria. Divorce her and be with me. What kind of life are you living now? A great tycoon's son who can't even produce a few $1 million, having to let his wife control all the money. The Ashworth family is going too far. I know you were forced into this. I feel sorry for you, Sincere, dear. Come back to me. Let's be together. Her speech was so ridiculous I wanted to laugh. How was I pitiful? And I had willingly let Victoria manage our finances. It was a part of our life as a couple. With that thought, my tone grew cold. Vivian, that's my family's business. It's not your place to comment. Besides, even if I did divorce Victoria, I would never get back together with you. Are you kidding me? How long are you going to keep up this act? I genuinely don't love you anymore, Vivian. Can't we just part amicably? My string of rejections and taunts finally brought Vivian to the verge of tears. Her voice choked as she began to emotionally blackmail me. Sincere Clark, my family is about to be ruined. Are you just going to stand by and watch us be destroyed? What did our 6 years together mean to you? Then I should be asking you, what did our 6 years mean to you? Nothing, right? You were the one who disappeared for a month to be with Ethan Miller right before our wedding. Who forced you? What's happening now is your own doing. It has nothing to do with me. Faced with my merciless rebuke, Vivian's tears stopped flowing. The act was over. She shot me a venomous look and left. Sincere Clark, you won't regret this. The next day, she took her entire family to a rooftop. By the time I heard the news, a crowd had already gathered below their building, pointing and murmuring. Mr. Clark, you're here. We have negotiators up there, but Miss Blackwood refuses to cooperate. She insists on you coming. She claims her family's bankruptcy is your fault, and that if you don't show up, they'll all jump. The coordinating police officer explained the situation as he led me into the building. I frowned but said nothing. When Harold and Martha saw me from above, they became even more agitated, shouting down at the crowd. Sincere Clark, look at what our family has become. This is all your fault. If you don't give us money, I'll jump from here. Sincere, I was so wrong about you. Give us the money. You've ruined us. We're old and don't even have a house left. Are you trying to kill us? When I reached the rooftop, several officers were already trying to de-escalate the situation. Seeing me, Harold and Martha grew even more self-righteous. At that moment, a dull ache throbbed in my temples. I couldn't help but speak out. What does your family's bankruptcy have to do with me? You're in this situation because of your own poor judgment and your obsession with get-rich-quick schemes. Martha was furious and pointed a finger at me. If you had married our Vivian, would any of this have happened? If the Clark Group hadn't withdrawn its investment, would we be in this state? But I distinctly remembered that they were happy when we withdrew our investment, boasting that they would run the company to great success on their own. The absurdity was overwhelming. This has nothing to do with the Clark Group. If you had controlled your greed, your company could have at least provided you with a comfortable life, even without our employees, and you still expect me to give you money? Just then, Vivian, who had been silent, finally spoke. She stood at the edge of the rooftop and yelled at me. "Sincere Clark, if you don't give me the money today, I will jump from here no matter what. You'll have a death on your conscience for the rest of your life." Looking at her frenzied expression, my first instinct was to refuse, but an officer pulled me aside and told me to stabilize them first. "Vivian, you and your parents come down first." I agreed to the amount you mentioned last time reluctantly. I agreed to give them the money. At first, Vivian didn't believe me, frowning as she stared at me. "Are you sure? I want a contract, I'm sure." After receiving my repeated assurances, they finally beamed and came down from the edge. But as they approached to get the money, they were instantly apprehended by the police and handcuffed. For a moment, all three of them froze. "What is the meaning of this?" Vivian's eyes widened. Harold and Martha struggled to escape but were restrained by the police. "I'm sorry, Miss Blackwood. You and your parents are under arrest for extortion and fraud." An officer showed his badge and motioned for the others to take them downstairs. They were poorly educated and had somehow learned this blatant method of blackmail, only to fall into their own trap. The three of them were dragged away, shouting all the while. Because the two elderly parents had masterminded the extortion plot, they received the longest sentences. They would likely never get out. Vivian, as an accomplice, was sentenced to several years. Before she was taken away, she stared at me with silent hatred, a look that sent a chill down my spine. But my life had to go on. Since Vivian knew our address, we moved to a new place to continue our lives. A few years later, Ethan Miller was also caught for defrauding the Blackwood family. His case led police to uncover a massive network of fraud involving an enormous sum of money. Ethan was sentenced to death and executed immediately. I felt nothing about it. He got what he deserved. Several years later, I was helping a pregnant Victoria take a walk by the river, admiring the pleasant scenery. Over the years, I had gradually stepped back from the family business, preparing to devote myself entirely to my family and our unborn child. This made Victoria very happy, and she was full of hope for our future. "What do you think we should name the baby?" "You decide. Anything is fine." I looked at Victoria's face and leaned in to kiss her, feeling a deep appreciation for all she was going through. The riverside was bustling with people in the early evening. "Sincere Clark, Victoria Ashworth, I want you dead." Everything changed in an instant. A disheveled figure burst from the crowd, rushing at us with a knife. My heart sank. The self-defense skills I had been honing for years finally came into play. I swiftly shielded Victoria and kicked the attacker to the ground. As my foot made contact, I realized the person was incredibly weak, not at all as ferocious as they had seemed when brandishing the knife. The person cried out in pain. When they looked up, I saw it was Vivian. She was gaunt, disheveled, and extremely thin. Clearly, the past few years had not been kind to her. "Sincere Clark, I'm going to kill you." Vivian caught her breath and tried to grab the knife again. But in those few seconds, a bystander kicked the knife away, and several others worked together to subdue her. The police arrived quickly and arrested Vivian. I comforted a slightly shaken Victoria and went with them to the station. Through the police, I learned the whole story. Her parents had fallen into depression in prison and had both committed suicide. When Vivian was released, the news drove her insane. She had been neurotically searching for me ever since. Later, when Vivian was committed to a psychiatric hospital, I went to see her once. "You're Sincere Clark, aren't you? It's you who wronged me. It was you. I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to kill Victoria. I'll send them all to hell." In her room, she was still shouting and cursing everyone, believing that the entire world had wronged her. I sighed and turned to leave. Victoria was due soon. Our family of three was about to begin a new life.